Welcome to lesson 2. This is Gen AI Starter, and this lesson we're going to talk about LLMs, large language models, and neural networks from a very kind of high level perspective, what they are, what it means when we engage with them, what are the pros and cons of this generative AI technology, how might it benefit us, how might maybe it not benefit us, and it's important to kind of have this grounding when we get into using these AIs and know exactly what it is we're dealing with. Okay, as I said, this is lesson 2 of the free course over at the Gen AI Skills Academy. And very quickly, let me just move some of this stuff out of the way. Just going to tell you a little bit about the Gen AI Skills Academy and about myself and what it's all about. Okay, so bear with me. So I'm Larry McGuire. I'm a work and organizational psychologist, and I work with people one-to-one, and I do workshops and talks and so forth on getting the best from oneself in the workplace, running a business, being in management, or simply just doing your job. And in this case, we're looking at how we can use generative AI and artificial intelligence technologies to improve our performance in work. Gen AI Skills Academy is a place where I'm building out content to help you understand what it is you're dealing with generative AI and how you can get the best from it, become more efficient and productive and creative in your work. You can get me at humanperformance.ie or my office at 13 Fage Street, Dublin 2. Larry G. McGuire on LinkedIn, and of course the Gen AI Skills Academy, where you're watching this video. Or if you're not watching it there, you're watching it free on LinkedIn or YouTube or one of those. Do check out the link somewhere below this video to get the full course. Okay, so let's have a look at the agenda for today's session. We look at where you can access learner resources, papers, these slides, research materials, and other content that supports this course. We'll take a quick look at that. We'll attempt to answer the question, what is a neural network? I think it's important to have that in your kind of knowledge base before launching into using these tools. And an extension of that then is, what is generative AI? What is it? What is this thing we're dealing with? Sharing information with, uploading documents, querying, and so forth. It's important to know that. How does it work? What's the process when we give it instructions, prompts, documents, and so on? As an extension from that, we'll attempt to answer what is an AI agent, how that operates, what makes it different from generative AI. We'll examine the good and the bad of AI, the pros and the cons, look at what some research has to say about that, and then we'll have a look forward into the next lesson. Okay, so the resources that you can get associated with this free course over on Generative AI Skills, all the folders and files associated on the PDF of these slides, you can click on that and get the resources. But if you're already logged in and watching it there, you should be able to see everything you need. Okay, so what is a neural network? What are we dealing with here? As you can see in the illustration just below, the purple dots or icons represent layers or nodes in a layer. So each layer in a network, there may be dozens or even hundreds or perhaps even thousands of layers in a network. And in each layer, there are nodes. And at each node, there is a processing of information. And the information then is weighted. And the network then decides where to send the passage of data, what decision to make. In other words, it's all done based on the algorithm that's designed, but inside the network, we don't necessarily know how it comes to its conclusion. It's not predetermined, in other words, the path of the data. So as you can see from the illustration, the data comes in at one point, the input, that's your prompt, or a photograph, or some other piece of data that researchers give to the large language model, to the neural network. and the network processes it in a way in which makes sense to it. Now, when I say make sense to it, I don't mean in human terms what makes sense. I mean what makes sense according to the algorithm that's been written. So that's really it in simple terms. MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, suggests it's where a computer learns to perform a task by analyzing examples of information from hand-labeled researchers. So, for example, you build a large language model, you want it to be able to recognize what cats are. Well, then you feed it thousands or tens of thousands of images of cats, and it examines the image at the pixel level and begins to remember what this equals or what it suggests that it is. And oftentimes it gets it wrong, but you feed it enough information, you feed it enough photographs of cats, it's going to learn what a cat is as distinct from a dog, purely by weight of the quantity of information that you give it. And so it learns what shoes are, cats, humans, dogs, roads, trains, trees, the sky, all this kind of stuff. It's what autonomous vehicles operate upon. Massive amounts of data read from its environment to a database to a neural network, and it decides then in an instant how to orient the vehicle on the road. Some would say that these autonomous vehicles are prone to less accidents than human beings, but that remains to be seen. I don't know how confident you might be, but I'm not sure I would be confident in a car that's driving itself. But maybe I'm just an artifact of my time. However, neural networks, long story short, they don't save information. They learn based on the data they have previously received what path to take through the network to provide an answer. So when writing a sentence, it learns what might come next in the sentence by virtue of being fed bucket loads, library loads of books and information on a particular topic. That's why when you ask it to create something new or creative or inventive, it's kind of funny and weird and not really accurate. And you know by the sound of it that it's a bit bizarre. Whereas if you give it specific content and ask it to focus upon that, you're more likely to get a better result. Well, we'll demonstrate this in lessons as we move forward. But long story short, the neural network attempts to recognize patterns of text and images based upon what it has been previously exposed to. So there's no database in the neural network, so to speak. Which brings us to the question, are they under our control? Geoffrey Hinton, one of the founding fathers of modern AI technologies, suggests that maybe they're not, that we don't know how a neural network comes up with an answer. We don't know specifically because we can't see into its decision making. And he reckons we should be concerned because the neural network offered a goal or given a goal by researchers, the people who design it, will circumvent all measures that we take to prevent it from doing so. So if it has a goal, it will set out to achieve that goal. And he reckons, Geoffrey Hinton, that the AI may in fact pursue that goal in the absence of care or attention to human beings. And you can see how that's been playing out in recent times with these friend bots and chat bots that exist, AI companions, dangerous territory. So when it comes to autonomous weaponry and so forth, he's quite nervous about how organizations, private companies, in fact, are using and developing AI technologies to advance their own particular interests. So I wonder if we are capable of democratizing AI. I'm not sure that'll happen anytime soon. So the message is here, we should be careful. So what is generative AI? Well, these are tools essentially that make predictions based on, as I mentioned, data that they have been previously exposed to. We can think of it as machine learning trained to create new data rather than making a prediction about a specific data set. So rather than being trained to take a particular predefined course of action, the LLM, the generative AI, will choose its own based on what it thinks you want. And I've found by engaging with the AIs over time, it begins to learn how I want material delivered and is more inclined to give me the answer that I want. However, it doesn't do the thinking for me. I can't know what I need to know if I don't consume the information. So although the generative AI might be able to give me a summary of 5 or 10 PDF research papers, if I don't read those papers, well, then I really don't know the information. So that's another important thing to take note of. This paper, by the way, by Zhu 2023 is available on the resource library associated with the lesson and the course. So generative AI, we're talking about Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, DeepSeek, Manus, Meta's Llama model, Grok. There are many others. Should we trust what they tell us in their responses? Well, Gary Marcus, cognitive psychologist, suggests maybe not. Again, these large language models, generative AI technologies are built by people with a corporate agenda. He suggests that we should be careful because they can be manipulated and built and designed in order to spread misinformation, disinformation. And so that are traditional spaces where we might gather information and knowledge and news and so forth. Maybe we can't trust them as much as we used to, because how do we know the information is accurate? And you'll know if you've engaged with some of these technologies already that they have the habit of inventing facts, so-called facts. They can be somewhat sycophantic. They can create references to research that doesn't exist. So all kinds of problems. Gary Marcus is on Substack. If you're not following his material, I'd recommend you sign up to his newsletter. So how do these work, these generative AI networks? So you can think of them as layers, as we mentioned, of hyperfast cognitive intelligence. Human beings, as we know, are more than simply cognition. We're more than IQ. We're more than academic ability. We have creative intelligence. We have social intelligence. We have kinesthetic intelligence. There are all these intelligences identified in the 80s and 90s by at least one researcher, Howard Gardner, theory of multiple intelligences. So, long story short, we're more than cognition. And what AI does is speed up our cognitive processes, our system one, you might say, which is already fast, and provides us with answers in a hyper-fast manner. The user interface, when you log into ChatGPT, when you log into Manus, when you log into DeepSeek or Claude, this is a software layer, the surface level software layer with which you engage. That's not the LLM, in other words. It takes our inputs and passes them on to the LLM to process and send back an answer. So the LLM then responds based on its training, not based on a stockpile or a server load filled to the brim with information. It's what it has previously learned. So think of it in terms of layers, layers upon layers of hardware and software, the front end of which is ChatGPT, which is where you engage. So how do they work? A typical flow might look like this. You write your prompt. An API call is raised to connect it to a piece of software running moderation. Once it passes through moderation, it goes to the LLM to process. It processes it and responds to you, and then the answer is displayed at the interface level. And all of this is done in a hyper-fast manner. It's incredible how quick this stuff can be done. You should keep in mind that your data, although you might opt out, may well still be used to train the LLM, okay? Corporations are desperate for income. They're going to do whatever they need to in order to ensure that they succeed. And sometimes they weigh up the cost of legal action for breach of data confidentiality versus making a buck. And, well, we know how corporations work. Your data is also used in the memory, your chat memory with your LLM, so it can create more contextually relevant responses. And also, if you engage with third parties who process through the likes of OpenAI or Anthropic's models, your information then goes to a third party. So you got to be really careful about where you're sharing your data and your information. And in the case of all three of these, your data is stored on a server. So when you engage in a chat and you upload documents and you share images and all the rest of it with your large language model, with your ChatGPT, your stuff is saved somewhere on a server by the company that runs the LLM. Although the LLM itself doesn't pull information from a server, if that makes sense. What is an AI agent then? Well, these are models that can act on your behalf inside your business. Thinking them somewhat like my friend here, Michael Wooldridge and Nick Jennings, in their paper Intelligent Agents. They say an agent is a combination of hardware and software with the following properties. It has autonomy, decision-making abilities, capacities, without your direct intervention. It has a social component. In other words, it can interact with other people or indeed agents to follow on pursue its goal and achieve its aim, which is predetermined. Reactivity, they can perceive their own environment, the environment in which they act and make decisions via the LLM. And they can be proactive, as I mentioned, goal-directed behavior. So once you let them off, they do what they have to do. And that should concern you to an extent, because there are certain tasks where human beings are essential, especially in decision-making, where the welfare of other human beings is needed. How this might look, for example, a customer sends you an email about a product and they need to return the item or get a refund. The AI agent then would run through, examine the email and read it and make a decision based on what to do next. It might send it to your CRM where it's processed and saved and so on under the client account. It will evaluate the query. It will then respond to the customer via email and subsequently then initiate the return or the replacement of the product if that's what it happens to be. So within the tight boundaries that we set for the AI agent in advance, it can go a couple of different paths based on data. Now, sometimes it gets this wrong, and of course, it doesn't have any discretion. Human beings have discretion, and we can see perhaps into the future a little bit and appreciate the experience of the client, whereas the AI agent can't do that. So do keep that in mind if you're intended on using agents. So what are the benefits of all this technology, these advancements? Well, according to some research, there's potential to create trillions in revenues and global GDP. And that's all well and good. You might ask yourself, but where's all these trillions going? Into whose pockets? And that would be a good question. It may improve the efficiency of machines and organizations and remove repetitive tasks. It may examine customer data, as previously explained in the example, the aforementioned example, and improve marketing and so forth. It may help improve risk or mitigate against risk in a high risk environment, assist in the managing of people at work. AI technologies already scan CVs, for example, to decide who's suitable for a particular role and who's not. So that it's already here. Identify anomalies in data streams, data sets, and so on. Predict failures. Help you identify anomalies in data. May even, according to some experts, improve treatments and medications, and may even provide solutions or cures to ongoing illnesses. Langer and Landers papers on Gen AI Skills Academy resources page. But there are downsides to all of this, and we should recognize them. We may be at the mercy of the algorithm, according to O'Neill. The algorithm runs and people suffer. Their environment suffers because the algorithm pursues its goal. an algorithm taken from one field and applied to another field might be problematic, O'Neill says, because it's not particularly designed for this new space. There's a de-skilling of teachers. Selwyn has warned us in 2019. Teachers, not only teachers, but students, reduced capacity to make good decisions. Cognitive offloading that stems from this. Gerlich 2025 suggests that there is a significant impact for learning and memory when people rely too heavily on AI tools and technology. AI is replacing people at work. Some say it will create new jobs, and maybe it will, but it's replacing people such as drivers of heavy goods vehicles in certain parts of the world. Chomsky says it's high-tech plagiarism. That's all it is. It's a plagiarism machine. I heard someone else call it that. I couldn't argue with that either. There are risks to human rights when AI is used to make decisions that impact people's access to welfare, support services, and so on. And there's a potential loss of human control, according to the Future Life Institute, which we mentioned earlier on. The LLM, in addition to all of this, reflects the biases of its creators. So white 30-somethings in Silicon Valley design a model, and it fails to take into account the cultural nuances of other particular groups, and biases exist. That's been found in research too. All of those papers are available on the resources space on the course page. So here's another issue. Is there a bubble? Some would suggest there is. OpenAI even say that there's a bubble. It's hard to ignore. What happens when this bubble bursts? I feel that the technology will remain, but it might look a lot different than we currently know it to be. Anthropic are in a hole as well. A lot of these big corporations are in a hole. So watch out over the next 5 years how this plays out, or even shorter time frame. Meredith Whittaker, president of Signal, co-founder AI Institute, suggests we do have a bubble. She says we're spending too much money on what is essentially an email writing engine, and she might be oversimplifying it, but she's got a point. There's just too much money being spent on this stuff, and it seems that the Chinese, in the launch of DeepSeek and other models, seem to be doing it for a lot cheaper, and we have to wonder. Is it valuable, or is it viable long term, given the amount of money being spent and how inflated the valuations of some of these corporations has become? So all of this is worth your consideration. However, with that base level consideration, in the next lesson, lesson 3, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of a couple of tools, and we're going to look at, in particular, ChatGPT and Claude, and we're going to look at the account settings and making sure that they're set right. We're going to look at data privacy settings inside both models, third-party integrations and how they work. We're going to look at custom instructions. These are important to help the AI narrow its focus a little bit and give you more accurate and contextually relevant responses. ChatGPT and Claude is what we'll focus on. In fact, lesson 3 and 4 is ChatGPT and Claude respectively. And that's what we're going to examine. I'm encouraging you now, whether you're watching this video on LinkedIn or YouTube or anywhere else, there's a link below to join the Mental Skills Academy. It's a place to learn generative AI for people who don't code. And although coding skills, arguably you'll need to know maybe a little bit about it, some of these tools don't need you to do so. You can learn how to use these generative AI tools, get the best from them without any coding. Button is live there on the PDF slides and also below. So I hope you'll come over and check that out. All the references from today's session. And I hope you enjoyed that. Let's just do this and come back to here. Thanks for listening in and watching. Like I said, Gen AI Skills Academy is built for people who don't code. I'm Larry McGuire, and I hope to see you for lesson 3 and 4 and so forth. Any questions, drop them below. Be happy to respond. Hope to see you in the next lesson. All right. Take it easy.